On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Omens by Lamb of God, not a Christian metal band.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we like to talk about it. And today we're talking about the newest album from Lamb of God called Omens.
A month ago it came out.
It came out quite recently here. And Lamb of God's a band that's been around for quite a long time.
Almost 30 years.
And
well, it has been 30 years.
Yeah. 28.
28 years. Okay.
Is what Wikipedia is saying here, although they had a different name at first.
Yeah, Burn the Priest, they were called.
But we'll talk about...
So then they were a Christian rock band.
Yes, yeah.
When they were Burn the Priest.
For sure. But we'll talk more about Lamb of God a little bit later on. First, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
It's good.
Feeling good.
Feeling good.
Yes.
The weather outside is frightful.
Yeah, or it's gonna be. Yeah,
it's going to be frightful. But we don't have a fire in here to be delightful.
I'm glad because there's no place for it.
Yeah.
If you had a fire in here, it would be a concern.
Yeah, it's not so well. You can have a candle. That's technically a fire.
It is technically, sure. I guess, or a match, or maybe a lighter lit.
But it sure is North Dakota outside, which I'm glad that it waited at the very least because I was out doing some hunting for some deers over the weekend. Although it was fucking awful on Sunday, it was awful.
But there was a reward.
Yes, I got my deer.
Yeah,
I filled the tag. Or at least the tag was filled. I guess that's what I'll say about that. But
well, did you get it? Was it? Or was it your dad?
No, it was my sister.
Oh, your sister. Gotcha.
Yeah. It was kind of a fucking awful weekend for me in the sense that every time that I got out to shoot at something, it was kind of just unsuccessful. There was just this pretty slim pickings. I mean, we all had buck tags, so that already makes things a little bit more difficult than normal. Not that we saw shit for does either. It was just kind of it was just weird. They just did not see very many deer all weekend. And all the bucks that we saw were pretty small.
Sure.
Not
juveniles.
Not the big fellers. The really big trophy bucks apparently don't really show their faces until about 3 weeks into the season. Cause that's into rut then.
Sure. Now they're horny.
Yeah. The season starts a couple.
Or randy, as you might say.
Yes. The season starts a couple weeks before rut, and then you get into that. And that's, the big old ones that have thus far survived long enough, avoided, any sort of hunting or predation.
Right.
They get horny enough to get real dumb.
But you have to wait.
Yeah. You got to wait until it's fucking cold. It's like it's always a toss up. The first season of the first weekend of gun season in North Dakota. It's always a toss up. It's like, it could be 50 degrees and sunny out, or there might be a foot of snow on the ground. Who knows?
And tomorrow there's going to be a foot of snow on the ground
or more.
Yeah.
We've had both. We've had times where there's been a foot of snow on the ground. We've had times where where it has been very, very nice out. This past weekend was kind of a toss up.
Sure.
It was kind of a little bit of both. There was a little bit of snow. It snowed while we were out there. It was extremely fucking windy on Sunday, which made the cleaning of the deer we did get on Sunday that much more unpleasant, especially for my dad, who was wearing rubber gloves as he was, attempting to take the meat off of the deer. It was quite cold in the wind. It wouldn't have been so bad if it weren't for the fucking wind. So I kind of
that says that on the North Dakota license plate.
It should be the state motto. It wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fucking wind. Yeah, it was a decent weekend. I didn't do a whole lot of shooting, but which is unusual for me. Usually I do quite a bit of shooting while I'm out there. I think I only pulled the trigger 3 times.
Really?
I only successfully pulled the trigger 3 times. There would have been another time, but I left the fucking safety on.
Sure. That makes it hard to hit target.
It makes it hard to shoot when you have the safety on.
Right.
And then there was another time when I shot, we got up and it ran off. Seemingly nobody hit it. And so I sort of went after it and didn't see it ever again, which is a good thing because I didn't have a round in the chamber anymore because the magazine on my gun takes a tremendous amount of force to seat in properly so it can load additional cartridges when you run the action, which bugs the shit. It's happened to me a couple of times where I guessed hit the release tab absent-mindedly or something, or it's got caught on something and popped out just a little bit, not enough to fall out, just enough to be popped out so that the next cartridge picks up. And it's bugged me.
Sure.
The one time, I mean, there are many times where I'm just, because I find guns to be quite interesting. I'm not like a Second Amendment person, but I just find guns interesting.
Sure.
But most of the year I don't seriously consider purchasing a gun. But every time I hit deer season, I'm just like, I'd love to have a Marlin lever action, just a 30-30.
Sure.
That would be cool. And there's that other part of my brain that's just like, is that practical? It's like plenty of people still have them and use them for deer hunting. I'm sure it's practical.
A 30-30 is the first weapon I ever fired.
I mean,
it was a Winchester.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic deer hunting rifle, and I'd love to have one. They make cartridges now with a pointy plastic tip on them because that way they're not at risk of setting each other off when they're in the tube.
Oh, sure.
Which is why, like lever actions, you're only supposed to use flat tipped cartridges or round tipped cartridges so they don't set each other off potentially.
Right.
Because the tip of one bullet sits against the primer of the next.
Right.
And that would be bad if for them to go off in there. But they make ones with like sort of soft, kind of flexible pointed plastic tips now that apparently are just fine. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just think lever action rifles are so fucking cool. It's, America, cowboys, yeehaw.
Right. And I think it was also my dad's way of sort of introducing me to guns can hurt you. So I had a big ass fucking bruise.
Oh, how old were you when
you? 9.
Oh, yeah. A 30-30 might be a little much for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Maybe a little too much recoil.
Did that and I missed the target. And I said, does this happen every time? He says, it won't happen with this bolt action 22. Okay, thanks.
Here you go.
Yeah.
But yeah. What else has been? Did I talk about playing Deep Rock Galactic?
No.
It's a really fun game. It's meant to be a co-op game. You can't play it by yourself, but it's meant to be sort of a 4-player co-op game. You play as a bunch of dwarves. You play as a bunch of space dwarves.
Okay.
And you are working for this company called Deep Rock Galactic, and you have to go to the various places on these different planets and mine minerals and defend yourselves from giant bugs.
Aren't they called something else now? The Space Dwarves? I thought there was a new name for them or something because they reintroduced a lot in.
You're talking about in Warhammer?
Yeah, Warhammer.
This isn't a Warhammer.
I know, but
they are the Leagues of Votann are aesthetically rather similar to the dwarves in Deep Rock Galactic. The Leagues are a little bit more like that. People have called them like their armor is slightly reminiscent of Buzz Lightyear.
Okay.
But and they've got a bit more sort of mystical kind of flair to them. The dwarves in Deep Rock Galactic are just dwarves with machine guns.
Sure.
And not, as far as I'm aware, no magic or anything. Elves are mentioned in the blurbs for some of the items in the game.
But you haven't
seen
any.
Seen.
No.
They're not seen. But it's just a really fun game. I've been playing with some other people. And you just fight off a bunch of big bugs and do a whole bunch of various other industrial stuff. It's a lot of fun.
A lot of the video games that I play are either because, you mentioned them, or because of Maximus.
Yeah.
And so this week, off and on, I've been playing a game called Spider Heck.
Spider Heck.
Yeah. It's a 2D game,
Okay.
and you're basically a spider that jumps around these objects, and they're different screens, and you got these flying creatures that have come to kill you, and then these weapons pop up, and you can grab the weapons, and you can use lightsabers. You're a spider with lightsabers.
Sure.
And you're
that's
killing monsters.
Fucking horrifying.
It's actually pretty fun. The game is actually pretty fun. Once you get coordinated, Maximus is like an Olympian when it comes to this game. he does things like I don't have the eye brain coordination to have done what you just did in this game. But yeah, that, and also I bought another game.
What did you get the God of War? Did you get the God of War?
Did you get the God of Wars?
Have you played it yet?
I've started the beginning of it. I mean, because it just obviously came out today.
Yeah.
I've looked at the beginning of it, and the first half hour of it is a lot of cinematics.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's every PlayStation exclusive single player game, though.
Yeah.
Is like, all right, so for the first half hour, it's not really going to be a video game.
Right.
We'll let you play the video game later, but for right now, you got to sit through a bunch of very, very pretty things.
Yes, and occasionally they say, "Oh, look, now it's time to run," and you can run for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, now more cinematic.
And here's a little quick time event for you to do this.
Right. Or you can climb up a thing.
Yeah, that was kind of what it was in the first God of War as well.
2018 one. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't because you just kind of walk around when you're hunting with Atreus, and then you get back and you have trees to cut down. Yeah, then you set off the pyre, and then you are hunting with Atreus, and then you fight Baldur, and that's the first time you can actually play the game.
Well, yeah, actually, your first
it's been a while.
The first thing you fight, I think, are some wolves.
Oh yeah, you fight wolves. That's right. You fight in a troll.
In a troll,
too.
Yeah.
I forgot about that scene.
And then you get back to the house, and then you lay down, and that's when you hear the dragon land.
Yeah, and Baldur shows up. It's been a while since I played the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's on PC now, so I could replay it.
You could.
But I've heard some complaints that it has caused PlayStation 4s to overheat.
The PlayStation 4, the one that you gave me.
Yes.
It's a first series, right? PS4?
I believe so.
And so the moment you hit the X button as your cursor, yeah, it sounds like it's going to take off any moment now.
That's what it sounded like when I played the first one on that machine.
Well, yeah. And also, by the way, when I do eventually upgrade, eventually when the PlayStation 4 flies apart in a ball of fire, I do have to upgrade to the PlayStation 5, I will have to pay a little extra to get the PS5 version of God of War.
Yeah. Why? Wait, is the PS5 version more expensive or something?
Okay, you can buy. There's a package that's $80 that you can have. You have access to the PS4 version and PS5 version and all this extra shit like this, special acts and some cosmetic stuff.
Okay,
I did not buy that. I bought the $60 regular video game version because I don't know why.
Because reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I keep on thinking I keep on hearing about PlayStation 5s are in stock, and I'm like, it's November.
Yeah.
If you want to buy one before the end of the year, you got to do it now. And I'm just thinking well, maybe I just won't buy one then. But then I'm also just but the new God of War looks pretty good. Yeah. And I'm just kind of going back and forth in my head. About whether or not to get a place. I'm also where precisely am I going to put it? Because they're fucking huge.
Yeah, it's just a heat sink with
they're massive. Those PlayStation 5s, they're huge, and it's like I'm not lacking for room necessarily, but it's gonna have to go on the floor, I think. Did I mention I talked to you about playing the original Dead Space? I don't know if I talked about it on
you mentioned, I don't remember if you mentioned it on the podcast, but you did mention it to me. I don't.
Yeah, I've been playing the original Dead Space as well, and that's like it holds up really well, generally speaking. There are like a couple little things like, oh yeah, this did come out in 2008. But for the most part, it holds up really well. One of the issues that I'm having with it currently is like I started playing it on hard because on the lower difficulties, it gets kind of too easy. And for me, I think playing it on like medium on your first playthrough is going to be sufficiently scary.
Sure.
Because like resource management is not going to be a problem on medium. And for the most part, it never really, like in any Dead Space game on regular difficulty, resource management has not been a problem. I haven't come close to running out of ammo or credits to spend on stuff and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But if it's completely a fresh experience for you, it's going to be scary because there's a lot of things you don't know. You don't know what to expect. Like I've played all the Dead Space games. It's been a while since I played any of them, but I am pretty inoculated to the tricks that the game has to pull. So it's not particularly scary to me anymore. It's like, I'm going to play it on hard. That way resource management's going to be a little bit more difficult. That adds some extra tension to things.
Sure.
And it wasn't a problem for like the first 5 levels. And then I hit the first real boss of the game.
Okay.
That used up all of my ammunition and I had very little money with which to buy more. And ever since then, the game's been real fucking difficult because I've been constantly like on the verge of running out of ammo. It's been a lot more difficult since then. And like the recommended thing to do on hard difficulty in Dead Space, especially the first one, is don't buy any other guns. Just stick with your plasma cutter. Don't use anything else. It's the first weapon you get. Just stick with the plasma cutter because the ammo drops also vary depending upon what you have in your inventory. So if you have more than one gun in your inventory, you will have that fraction of ammo will drop for it. So if you have 4 guns, a fourth of the ammo will be for one, and a fourth will be for the like.
So it's the same amount of ammo. It's just now divided up among the weapons.
I mean, the ammo is dedicated for each weapon, but like as you're walking around the world, stuff that you find in crates will be a quarter of the time this, a quarter of the time that. You, roughly speaking, over the long term. In the short term, you might get ammo only for your Ripper gun when you really, really, really want ammo for your plasma cutter. So the better thing to do is to just stick with 1 or 2 weapons and get ammo only for that one. There was a type of enemy where there's these tiny little crawling swarms, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pick up this, like, it's like this sonic shotgun that you get that like unleashes this big blast of force. It's really good for killing swarms of little things. It's like, I'll pick that up because whenever these things show up, the plasma cutter doesn't do the job because it only can hit like one of them at a time. And there's 40 of the fucking things. So I waste so much goddamn ammo. But that's also part of what got me in that situation where I ran out of plasma cutter ammo, and the force gun is fucking useless for anything that's not a foot away from you.
Sure.
And I didn't have the upgrade materials to make it any better because I spent all of them on my plasma cutter. So eventually I got rid of it, and that sort of solved a little bit of the problem. But Dead Space is a really good series of games. At the 1 and 2 are really good. 3 is kind of It's kind of Like people constantly compare Dead Space 1 and 2 to Alien and Aliens.
Oh wow!
But sure. I think both of them sit much more closely in the middle between the two of them. Like the juxtaposition is that Alien is a very tense, horror movie that doesn't really have any action in it. It's just it's straight up a tense horror movie with a classic movie monster.
Right.
And there's not guns or anything. There's a makeshift flamethrower, and that's it. And
Aliens.
Aliens, on the other hand, is a big bombastic horror action movie with space marines and guns and everything in it. Like, both games sit more in between the two of them. One does lean closer to Alien. 2 does lean closer to Aliens.
Right.
Like 2 is a bit more bombastic and action packed, but it's not necessarily that much less tense and atmospheric than 1 is. They're much closer together than Alien and Aliens are.
So when you finish game 2, what is it that you find yourself saying? Game over, man.
Okay, I was like,
Sorry.
what are you trying to get? What are you trying to get out of me here? That
was bad.
That does happen in Deep Rock Galactic, though. They do literally come out of the walls.
Really?
At times, like the bugs will tunnel out of the walls, and so every time that happens, I do go, "They're coming out of the walls, man! Game over, man! Game over!" Like, you can't not do that.
Sure.
But yeah, Dead Space 3 just kind of like goes even further into the action territory and is much less scary of a game. Would
you compare it to Alien 3?
No, because Alien 3 kind of tries to go back to the Alien 1 style formula of being a bit more tense and less action oriented, but is just in general not a particularly... I don't have great, like, I think I've only seen Alien 3 all the way through once.
Yeah.
Or I've seen the other 2 multiple times.
Same here.
Yeah, there's a Dead Space remake coming out sometime next year.
Like a Dead Space versus Predator? Or?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just a remake of the first game that's coming out early next year, I think. And then there is a game from most of the same people who made the original Dead Space called Callisto Protocol that's coming out in December, starring North Dakota's Josh Duhamel.
Minot's Josh Duhamel.
But interestingly enough, I believe, God, what country was it? I can't remember what country it was. The game is not going to be, I think it might have been Japan. The game is not going to be sold in that country because it is apparently too graphic.
Really? Wow.
I can't remember what country it actually was, but it had to do with apparently the dismemberments in the game.
Really?
There's something about like dismemberment in the game. Which is a mainstay of like this team and like sort of the Dead Space franchises.
Sure.
That's literally how you kill the necromorphs, is dismembering them. And it's very similar in Callisto Protocol, which is a spiritual successor. And it's the sort of thing where it's like, you can't just turn it off because that's the game. Like, if you turn off the dismemberment, you don't have a video game anymore. So we're just not going to be able to sell this video game in your country. We're very sorry. If you pre-ordered it, here's your money back. Like, just kind of sucked. And then everyone was like, well, Australia's next, I guess. Because that's fucking every single time. Australia is really, really sensitive about their video games for some reason. I don't really know why.
Being such a rugged sort of place,
can't have the kids be seeing the blood and guts in the games.
That's more Kiwi.
Hey, who cares?
All right,
who fucking cares? That's probably because I was listening to Worst Idea of All Time earlier today. And I've been watching lots of clips of the Book of Boba Fett for some reason, despite the fact that I haven't watched the television show.
Why haven't you watched it? Well, I guess you don't have Disney Plus, do you?
I have access to Disney Plus. I just kind of didn't care.
It's a good show. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
It's just the vast majority of the stuff is just like, I just kind of don't care. All the Marvel stuff, don't really care.
Maybe there's good stuff in the Marvel stuff.
I haven't
watched all of it myself.
I know that there's good stuff, but it's like, nah.
You don't feel motivated?
I don't feel motivated to watch it. I haven't heard, enough sort of things to where it seems like most of it isn't really going to be my sort of thing. I feel like I've become much pickier about TV shows.
Well, especially
that I watch as I've gotten older.
The vast amount that are there in your face at all times.
There's so many. Like I feel like I used to watch a lot more TV and movies and that sort of thing, and I've just kind of gotten a lot pickier about what I'm willing to invest my time in.
And speaking as an old man, Sonny. That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen with everything.
It'll happen to you.
It did happen.
I used to be with it. Then they changed what it was
that I was with.
Do you want to talk about Lamb of God?
All right.
So Lamb of God is an American heavy metal band. We'll call them that.
Yeah.
From Richmond, Virginia.
Indeed.
They founded in 1994 under a different name called Burn the Priest. At the time, they were more of a death metal band, as I understand it. Kind of their early material leaned more towards death metal. In 1995, as it would seem, is when Randy Blythe joined the band. And has been their vocalist ever since. The band, for as long as they've been around, has had a pretty stable lineup.
Yes.
Most of the members that came and went, as I understand, did so pretty early on. And the only recent departure that they have had was Chris Adler, who had been their drummer since the band was founded up until late in or mid 2019. But other than that, have had a very stable lineup for quite a long time, and are considered generally to be one of the big four, as it were, of the new wave of American heavy metal. As much as anyone can say that there is a big four of that movement, it's kind of interesting. Like the whole concept of the new wave of American heavy metal is really sort of died out. Yeah, like it's I think it's all kind of.
It became other stuff.
Yeah, it all became other stuff pretty quickly. It was never really a definitive genre to begin with anyway. They're like a lot of the bands that sort of started at that time or like that are associated with it are easy to call like, well, they don't really fit in any particular genre. So they're new wave of American heavy metal. But then bands that founded after that time, for whatever reason, seem to fit into those boxes a little bit better. Like, you know, you have metalcore bands that were a part of the new wave of American heavy metal. It's your Killswitch Engages, and depending upon who you ask, Lamb of God certainly has a lot of metalcore in their DNA of the earlier type of metalcore, of the late 90s type, rather than the 2010s Asking Alexandria type. But and you know, you have a lot of groove metal bands that, you know, this is post Pantera, right?
Well, Pantera at the same time,
yes, really. But post like the real big heyday of Pantera in the early 2000s, really late, like new wave of American heavy metal is late 90s and early 2000s. Yeah. Like a kind of a period of about 5 years between like 1998 and like 2003 to me is kind of what the time period I associate most of these bands with. The other bands you've got in that big four, you've got Trivium, you've got Avenged Sevenfold, and you've got Slipknot. And I don't want to say that I feel like all of the bands have maybe lost a little bit of steam. I think Trivium is doing okay.
They put out an album not too long ago. Yeah.
Like all these bands are still producing material, but I don't know if any of them are considered. None of them are really the artistic force that they were, except maybe Lamb of God. Right. I know people were not particularly fond of their self-titled album
from 2020.
Right. People are a lot more fond of Omens than of the self-titled album. Like, I don't know. I guess I haven't checked if Avenged Sevenfold ever put out that album that they've been working on for like 5 years or something like that. I mean, Trivium's still putting out work. I just don't really hear a lot of these bands talked about the same way that certain other bands are, in the sense that like they're still massive names and they're headlining festivals and getting huge crowds, but they're not really in the sort of kind of artistic zeitgeist, I guess, of the genre. They're not doing anything new anymore.
Sure.
Everybody knows what these bands are. Everybody knows what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing anything new or crazy.
I mean, these guys are in their 50.
Yeah. And I was reading a review of this album talking about how at one point Randy Blythe was just like, I don't know if I want to do Lamb of God when I'm 50. Well, apparently he does. Yeah. He's still doing it.
Right.
He turned 51. Mm-hmm. But they've been around quite a while at this point. Mm-hmm. This is at least as Lamb of God album number 9,
11 if you count
their Burn the Priest albums.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because Lamb of God has always been one of those bands that has been directly adjacent to so many things that I like. Mm-hmm. But I've never really gotten into them.
They've always been on your periphery.
Yeah, but not the band periphery.
Right. Not to confuse things.
Which I also haven't ever really gotten into. There's a couple of periphery songs that I think are really good, but I haven't really gotten in. But no, like they've always just kind of been around. Mm-hmm. And I've known people, I've had friends that really like Lamb of God. I know they're a very popular band, but it's always just been like, yeah, that I've listened to their albums and like, yeah, it's good, but then I don't go back to them.
Right.
Like I remember, like the last time I think the last time I really listened to them for any amount of length whatsoever was in 2016. So it was this was 6 years ago. Sure. When Sturm und Drang came out. And I thought, hey, that's a pretty good album. I listened to it a couple of times and then kind of didn't care to go back to anything else that they put out. Mm-hmm. And a number of other bands sort of in that big four are the same way. I've listened to some Trivium stuff before and gone like, it's pretty good. Haven't gone back to it.
Haven't gone back.
Avenged Sevenfold I was much more into when I was a teenager, but since then have had very little to no desire to listen to anything they've done. Mm-hmm. And Slipknot is very much like Lamb of God, where it's just like I've, listened to some stuff on occasion and haven't really cared much, despite Loudwire trying to shove them in my face constantly.
When I got married this past time, the second time, my wife at the time had 3 Slipknot albums.
3 Slipknot albums.
Yes, and that's how I got introduced to them.
I feel like it's just the whole, so many bands in the new wave of American heavy metal just don't feel specific enough for me.
Like the album of theirs, of Lamb of God's I had to listen to last was Ashes of the Wake, and that's from 2004.
Yeah, that's one of their older ones.
Yeah.
I feel like I like being able to put bands in boxes. I enjoy being able to say, well, this band is this.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Like, if I can say this is a doom metal band, this is a metalcore band, this is a black metal band.
See, I appreciate kind of the opposite when something's presented to me and somebody says it's this kind of a band, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like what you're talking about at all. It sounds like something I've never heard before. Yeah. I like that.
I appreciate weird stuff, certainly, but like I don't need music I listen to be like, this is the most meat and potatoes death metal you have ever heard. Sure. Like I like for people to play with the formula of things, but when it's just sort of nebulous, like this is heavy metal, there's always something about it where it's like, give me something more, give me something concrete. Give me a name. God damn it. I don't know.
That's very human.
I don't really know how to articulate my feeling about that. But this album, I will say I was pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah, this was largely recorded live.
Yes, in the same room,
right?
All together, which is something of a miracle for albums that have been made over the past 2 years.
Right.
But yeah, they got together, recorded it all together. And I think this is a very very good album. And it's an extremely Lamb of God album.
It's an extremely Lamb of God album. Yes.
Like, I don't think if you're at all familiar with their discography, you will be shocked or surprised at anything that you hear on this. It's very them. It's very aggressive. It's very angry sounding. Lots of biting lyrics. One of the things that I've always appreciated about Randy Blythe as a vocalist is that he's very decipherable.
Yeah, he is.
It's very easy to understand his style. And I also think, like, with them primarily being a groove metal band, I think that's the lion's share of their DNA as Lamb of God is made up by groove metal.
Yeah, and he does that thing that you complain about.
He does that on occasion.
Yeah,
like
not as much as
the spoken word, the
Phil Bozeman spoken word thing.
Phil Anselmo.
Not Phil Bozeman.
No,
got my Phils confused for a second. Yeah, the Phil Anselmo spoken word thing. He does that on occasion. What I think of, though, when I think of Randy Blythe is the wow that he does.
Right.
He adds these flourishes very frequently that just seem to fit so well with the style of music that is being played, where I cannot imagine a vocal performance without those touches that he includes. It's part of what has always made Lamb of God. It's you can't have the band without Randy Blythe.
Right. That's why they couldn't leave him in prison.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth talking about that. If you don't know anything about Lamb of God and then you search for like their history, you might be surprised or shocked to learn that in 2012, late 2012 into early 2013, Randy Blythe was held in jail for a while in the Czech Republic on charges of manslaughter connected to, in 2010, they were playing a concert in Prague and a number of fans tried to get up on stage and Randy apparently wasn't having it.
I thought it was a wall of death that he encouraged.
No.
Wasn't it?
That might have been a completely different thing that I remembered at one point, because I know we've talked about this before, and I think I was thinking of a completely separate incident, probably not even with this band. This incident was they were playing a show at this club, and one fan had tried to get up on stage a couple of times. Randy did not want that. Very strongly, pushed the fan off. A different fan got up on stage, and Randy thought it was the same guy and very much more forcefully pushed them off stage. They fell into an empty part of the crowd, hit their head, seemed like they were okay. And then towards the end of the show, went to the hospital. They eventually fell into a coma, and a number of weeks or months later, I can't remember, eventually died.
And by that time, the band had left the country.
Yeah, by that time, the band was gone. And Randy has said that he didn't even hear that this happened until they came back to the Czech Republic and he was arrested.
Right.
He was arrested on charges of manslaughter. And eventually it was determined that he had moral responsibility for the incident, but was not considered criminally liable.
Oh,
when he was being held in prison, it was entirely because they considered him to be a flight risk, basically. But it was eventually determined that most of the responsibility fell on like event staff and that sort of thing, and that it was, ultimately it was his action of pushing the person off the stage that eventually resulted in their death. But it was not, at least as the court determined, was not enough to throw him in prison for manslaughter and charge him criminally. Very unfortunate accident, but it's also sort of the thing to remember of just like, I think as a fan, sometimes you got to remember that the people up on stage are performing for you, but they're not your friends necessarily. Right. Some bands like it when people get up on stage to do stage diving and that sort of thing. Some bands do not. And a lot of witnesses had claimed that Randy made it very clear he did not want people to get up on stage with him. He had also, though, apparently there was some confusion. Maybe it was a language thing. He had like chanted like, come on, a couple of times because it's a metal show. He was trying to get people to like interact and keep the energy up. But apparently some people had interpreted that of come up on stage, which was not what he was trying to do. But yeah, the whole incident, 2012 was kind of an interesting time as a heavy metal fan, because that was also the year that what's his face from As I Lay Dying got thrown in prison.
Oh yeah,
for Tim Lambesis.
Yes,
got
tried to have his wife murdered or whatever.
Yes, hired what turned out to be an undercover cop to kill his wife.
Right.
But yeah, ultimately it was found that he was responsible for it, but not criminally responsible.
Sure.
But by all other accounts, I've heard that he's by all accounts, generally, I've heard Randy Blythe is a pretty nice guy.
Yeah.
Shit happens. And sometimes, you know, when you're up on stage and the energy is high, you do stuff without thinking about it too hard. And you push somebody.
Yeah.
When you shouldn't have pushed somebody.
Or you stab somebody.
Or you stab somebody 25 times in the head. In self-defense.
Right.
Make that very clear. It was self-defense.
Self-defense.
And then you drink some chocolate milk.
Exactly.
From their fridge. Maybe that was just an invention of that movie.
It might have been. I actually kind of want to see that again.
See Lords of Chaos again?
Yeah.
I have no desire to ever watch Lords of Chaos again. I have no desire to see that movie ever again.
Home Alone Oslo. Yeah.
But that was just sort of an interesting chapter in the band's history.
Sure.
Let's get back to talk about the album. What's been your experience with Lamb of God?
Like I said last week, I've been kind of lukewarm on it. I mean, usually if I'm listening to Lamb of God, it's because I'm hanging out with somebody else who's listening to Lamb of God.
Yeah,
that's usually what happens, and I've never not enjoyed it.
Yeah,
but then like later on, it doesn't occur to me. I don't know what about it doesn't occur to me to like get out and buy one of their albums. I mean, yeah, I probably would if I thought about it. But I don't think about it.
I'd probably buy this album.
Yeah, this is really good.
This is a very good album. And like I said, if you've heard any Lamb of God before, there's nothing in here that's crazy out of left field for them.
No,
but it's just solid work.
Very solid work. And there's a documentary about this album.
About this album? About
the making of this album.
Okay. I know they've done that before. I guess I didn't realize that they had done one for this one too.
Right.
But
it's on their website.
On their website, okay.
But yeah, so that's been it. And like I said, the last Lamb of God, I almost said God of War. The last Lamb of God album that I really listened to in any kind of palpable way, like all the way through, was their 2004 Ashes of the Wake.
What was the song? What was the album that had the song Redneck on it? Was it that one, or was it? So I can't remember which one had. Oh. Redneck is like one of their more famous songs, I think.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember who that was. The song was written.
It was like a diss track.
Yeah, it was like a diss track written specifically about somebody. I can't remember who it was. For some reason in my head, my brain is telling me Phil Anselmo, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It's off the album Sacrament. Oh, yeah. What year was Sacrament?
Redneck song. Sacrament was 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember who it was written about.
Are you looking for it there?
I am kind of looking for it. Who was the song Redneck written about? Redneck by Lamb of God. I mean, just seemingly general characters in the music industry is what it claims. But I am Oh,
What?
Apparently it was actually written by another member of the band, Mark Morton, about Randy Blythe. Because apparently Randy was drinking a bit too much at the time. At this point, he has quit drinking and is also has quit smoking as well. And I know that because I saw in another review, the same one where he was like, I don't know if I want to do Lamb of God when I'm 50, was them being asked like, okay, you've quit drinking, you've quit smoking. What are you going to quit next? And he jokingly went Lamb of God. Yeah.
And one of the funny things is when you see the band, if you see the band out of context, just wearing like regular clothes, you're like, oh, is the nursing home having an outing? Or?
Randy Blythe is an interesting looking man.
He is. He's got the white guy dreads. And very long. But
he's also rail thin.
Yeah.
He's always been incredibly thin and has a very, very severe facial features. Like he looks like he should be a character actor. He's just got a very unique, very severe face.
Right.
But when you see him sort of out of context, where he's wearing his glasses and, just wearing a sweatshirt or whatever, just like, oh, that's just some guy.
Yeah.
And then you see pictures of him on stage, like that's a heavy metal singer right there.
Exactly.
Sort of, it's not like Corpse Grinder, where Corpse Grinder is always Corpse Grinder.
Yeah.
That's just what he always looks like.
Doesn't matter where he goes.
That neck follows him everywhere because it's attached to him. Does his album slap?
Yeah.
Oh God, yes, it does.
Oh yeah.
It slaps the shit. I mean, there's one of the things that's always been great whenever I've listened to Lamb of God is just the riffs are so really good riffs.
My favorite thing that they do is they do the really good riffs and then the really heavy and really just thrashy sounding and the groove metal sound.
Yeah.
But their chord progressions sometimes it's like some spine chilling chord progressions that they stick in there and they're like, I did not see that coming. That was great. That was just musically great.
They're damn good at what they do. I mean, they've had a lot of time to figure out how to do it real good.
Sure.
But yeah, who are the guitarists? It's let me look at the band members again. Be Willie Adler, and Mark Morton, both guitarists for the band, and they're damn good at what they do. I thought, I mean, we'll get to the score, I guess, before I start talking about what my favorite song on the album is. I actually didn't write down the score for some dumb reason. If there is one out there, I don't know.
I found like the out of 5 scores. A lot of them say 4 out of 5.
Yeah, that was the vibe that I got as well. Let's see if there is. Yeah, there's not enough on the Wikipedia page for the album to do one off the cuff.
Right.
But my favorite song on this album is September's Song.
The last song.
The last cut, entirely because buried way deep down there in the mix, there's some fucking keyboards.
Yeah.
There's fucking keyboards buried way down there in the mix.
It's the song that sticks out on the album. It does, definitely.
Barely even there. It's there just enough to make it go like, ooh, what is this? A little treat for me. Everything else on top of that is still, it's the same sort of Lamb of God, just like tons of great. I mean, the opening and the closing is a bit softer, a bit more somber. It's a bit more dynamic than is usual for them. There's our favorite word.
The D word. We're giving you the D, folks.
We're giving you the D.
Yeah.
But it's a bit more dynamic in general, but the meat of the song is still very much a Lamb of God song. But then you got that keyboard melody underneath there. And that was like crack from my brain. I was just like, what is that? I was at work listening to it and I stopped and was like, what is this? I got to focus on what I'm hearing. Cause it's also, you got to stop what you're doing because it's so low in the mix. I kept on waiting for it. I was like, all right, we're here. We're here at the last part of the song. All right. And bring it up in the mix. And bring it up in the mix. No, they didn't do it. I still really love the song.
Right.
But I really wanted them to be like, all right, understated. And here it is. But
right.
It wasn't there.
Right.
I was hoping for like a big old crescendo. I didn't get it. Not everybody pulls a Lorna Shore.
Right.
Does the big,
exactly
symphonic crescendos. What's your favorite song?
I gotta say that one's my second favorite song.
Okay.
Vanishing is my favorite song on this
Vanishing's
album.
pretty good.
Yeah, that has the aforementioned chord progressions sort of in there that I really, really enjoy.
I would say for my second favorite, probably Ditch.
Ditch. Yeah, I think that's the single from the album, isn't it?
It's one of them. Nevermore, I think, got released as a single as well. Yeah, I love the sheer amount of riffs. I think Ditch is the one where I'm just like, I'm hearing like a little bit, just like little bits of death metal still in there. It's still in their DNA. And you hear that every once in a while, whereas you hear it one particular like riff or a fill where it's like, oh, that's kind of a death metal dealio right there. Also, I like that Denial Mechanism is basically just a hardcore punk song.
Yeah, it is. It is the second to last song. Yeah, that's
which is also a fairly large part of their DNA. I think
it is. Well, and it's more so on this than it has been for a long time.
Yeah.
I know that.
I think a big part of their hardcore influence is just how fucking angry they are. How angry they have always sounded.
Right. And their themes are angry too.
Yes.
I mean, the stuff they talk about is like social stuff and political stuff.
Yes.
And that Nevermore is about Richmond, essentially. Yeah.
Which was once the capital of the Confederate States of America.
Right.
So you can imagine that being from there, and especially over the last couple of years, that maybe they have some observations to make. If you like heavy metal, why not listen to this album? What say ye about the type of metal to bestow upon thee this album,
which is metal.
Like Maz Kanata to Chewbacca?
That was the weirdest way you've ever phrased that.
And also, it occurred to me as I was saying the Maz Kanata to Chewbacca thing that we are so far divorced from the origin of that bit now that it no longer makes sense to anyone but us.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I don't care.
It's a tradition at this point.
What are you doing?
I give this a high silver.
I gotta agree.
Yeah.
I gotta agree with that. A high silver. It's the sort of album that's making me, listening to this made me go, I should go back and re-listen to some other Lamb of God albums.
Yeah.
And see what jumps out at me, what pokes me, what I might enjoy. Sort of reevaluating my idea of the band and kind of going like, oh, maybe it's time for me to be into this. Let's go check out some of their other stuff.
Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. So next week, I finally know ahead of time what album I want to talk about the following week.
Yeah.
And it's an album that popped up on my Spotify feed as like a suggested thing to listen to.
Sure.
And I was looking for something to listen to, and I was like, oh, well, let's give this a shot. It's called From the Gallery of Sleep by a band called Night Verses.
Okay.
They are at this point, instrumental 3-piece progressive metal band.
Really?
They're labeled as post-rock, but I feel like they're, for the vast majority of the time, much too heavy to, at least on this album, much too heavy to be called solely a post-rock band. I would call them more of an instrumental post-metal or really progressive metal band. There's too much wacky bullshit going on to just be strictly a post-metal band.
Okay.
The tempos are too fast. There's too many crazy time signatures.
Heavy guitars.
Very, very heavy guitars usually. Lots of like weird sound samples.
Cool.
Like there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I've been listening to it kind of on repeat for the last couple of days because it's just like, oh, Spotify actually presented me with something I want to listen to. Here we go. But yeah, From the Gallery of Sleep by Night Verses.
By the way, I realized something, that there's a difference between me and my youngest child, like a vast difference, because he was trying to watch The Simpsons, and I was listening to this album, and he says, I wouldn't tell this to anybody else, Dad. I love you, but your music makes it impossible to listen to anything else in the house.
What is that? Oh,
because it's Lamb of God. If it was like, anybody else playing just some sort of music.
Were you listening to it through your headphones, or was it through
I had listening through the phone.
Why.
Yeah, if that was something like trippy or vibey or something, I might be able to handle it. But can you put on the headphones?
Put your headphones on.
You're right. You're totally right, kiddo. Putting the headphones on.
Yeah, I have difficulty paying attention to anything when there's like any sort of the exception to that is at work, because the music that gets played at work is such white noise at this point.
Oh yeah,
it's like it's easy to tune out.
It becomes that way, and it has to become that way.
Yeah,
you'll lose your sanity if it doesn't.
It's ever present.
Right.
But
that's why I found out early on as a broadcaster, you can work at any kind of station. As you're training to work in radio, you're thinking, I don't want to work in that kind of music. I don't like it.
No,
dude, seriously.
Eventually, after a couple of weeks, it will not fucking matter.
At all.
It will not matter. Although I will say, as far as it being on, I got used to country when I worked for our country station. Like, I got used to having to hear it, but there are specific bands that I still cannot stand. I still absolutely fucking despise Rascal Flatts. I don't know what. I just hate Rascal. I just hate them.
Really?
I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but I hate them. Nobody likes Luke Bryan. In our building, anyway.
Right.
Nobody likes Luke Bryan in our building.
Even though he's extremely popular.
He's extremely popular, but everyone we work with hates Luke Bryan because we all hate his voice because he sounds like this. Everybody always says he sounds like Kermit. I don't think he sounds like Kermit.
Gomer Pyle, I think, is closer to,
there's a couple of country artists I just straight up despise, and if I hear them, I will go like, God, fuck that guy. Entirely because I don't like the music, not necessarily because they're bad people.
You can just assume.
Although I think the lead singer of Rascal Flatts is kind of an unsavory character.
Gary LaVox.
Has said some unpleasant things, but
they all have. I mean,
yeah. Probably not Chris Stapleton. He seems like he keeps pretty quiet.
He keeps pretty quiet and also likes he appreciates decorum.
Yeah,
somebody who's like, I want everybody to be comfortable.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything bad about Luke Combs.
Sure,
but he hasn't ultimately been around all that long, so he's got plenty of time.
Right, exactly.
To fuck up in some way. Garth Brooks is just fucking weird.
Just ask Tom Segura.
Yeah. He's obsessed with Garth Brooks, and I love that. All right, let's end the episode.
Okay. I'm hungry.
Nice sync up on there.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Bronze Medals podcast. If you'd like to hear more, why not subscribe to our feed on whatever it is you're using to listen to us, whether that's your Apple Podcast app or Libsyn's podcast source, or I don't know, some secret thing I forgot about. It might be there. I don't know.
Sure. Maybe your Apple Watch.
Yeah. And go ahead, follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. We're at Bronze Medals Podcast. There, if you search for it, might not be the exact name, but you'll get to us. Or maybe a weird knockoff I don't know about. Yeah. Who's doing that?
That's
for this podcast.
That'd be crazy.
I'd be flattered, honestly. So until you hear from us again, thanks very much for listening to the Bronze Medalist Podcast. I'm Kale.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.